Recognize Umbral Walker D01. Recognize the Caleb G D02.
Hello, team! Thanks for listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files, episode 22. Welcome to the cave. I am everyone's favorite sidekick, Caleb, and stakeouts make me crazy. Allow me to introduce Rich. I'm one of a kind. Howard! As always, thank you for listening to Whelmed. You can reach out to us anytime. We're available on Twitter at the YJ Files. Our website is crashingthemode.com, and our show email is whelmedpodcast@gmail.com.
This could wind up being one of those things that sounds better in my head than out loud. But you are a real archer. No, I mean, I'm jazzed about Red Arrow. We go way back, you know? But you've made your own place on the team. You have nothing to prove. Well, not to me, okay?
Okay. And Wally? It sounded fine out loud.
With that housekeeping out of the way, let's kick it off with Rich and...
Hello, Megan!
Title of this week's episode is Insecurity. The release date was March 31st, 2012, with the previous episode the week before. In episode date is December 4th. We're closing in on the end of the year, everyone. The director was Jay Oliva, and the writer was Peter David.
Voice-wise this week, as always, Alan Tudyk as Mr. Green Arrow, who we just love and adore so much. I also feel like we need to point out Josh Keaton has a role in this episode.
Oh, that's right.
And we will explain that momentarily. Let's get right into the mission briefing.
Just in time for your next mission.
All right, our pre-credit scene is Green Arrow and Artemis stopping an assassination attempt on a reporter by the infamous Black Spider, voiced by the aforementioned Josh Keaton, while Sportsmaster simultaneously breaks Professor Ivo out of Belle Rev. We also get a clear signal that Hugo Strange, who is the current warden of Belle Rev, is working with the light as he is interacting directly with an android duplicate of Professor Ivo in the prison that he clearly knows is an android.
Post-credits, we have Green Arrow and Red Arrow working together to stop a bank robbery for old time's sake. GA lets Roy know that he's been accepted into the League, but asks him to set a good example by joining the team first. We then cut to Artemis talking about rescuing the reporter in front of the reporter's daughter and how happy it made her. She finds out that her mother begged Batman and GA to take her on.
We get some of that scene in the comics, by the way, too, so you should go check those out. Sportsmaster arrives to an unknown location in New Orleans, delivering Professor Ivo to Clarion and the Brain and Monsieur Mallah. We don't know what they're up to, but we do know that delivery of quote-unquote special equipment is on the way.
And that scene had a line that I almost used for our opening when Clarion said, "I didn't order this, send it back." That was a close winner, guys.
I really like this Clarion.
I love Clarion. Anyway, cutting back to the action, Artemis spends time outside a Zeta tube psyching herself up after being disappointed that Batman and Green Arrow didn't ask her to join the team solely on her skills. When she arrives at the cave, she finds Roy there, having taken Green Arrow's advice about joining the team. GA fills the team in on the mission, which is that Sportsmaster was spotted with facial recognition software at Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans. GA recommends the ex-sidekicks suit up together, but Artemis asks to go along, using her skills as one of the best bioship pilots as an in.
I thought that was kind of a cool aside, too, with Artemis, that we find out that she's one of the better pilots. On the trip to New Orleans, Wally makes it clear to Artemis that she has nothing to prove to the team, since she clearly had some attitude in the previous scene. It's actually one of the best, most mature moments for Wally in the series so far, and I really appreciated seeing that shift in his tone. Roy and Calder are in the back of the bioship stowing gear away when Roy makes it clear that he joined the team, not because Green Arrow asked him to and he's such a sweet guy, but he joined the team to help Calder finally track down the mole or moles that could be on the team.
Cutting back to the cave, Zatanna gets curious about what Red Tornado does in his apartment in the cave, since he doesn't have to eat, sleep, or do anything a human does. We then jump back to the team tracking Sportsmaster through a New Orleans bayou.
Artemis is surprised by Cheshire in the bayou, who distracts Red Arrow and Artemis while Sportsmaster picks up a case from a passing train, and we hear the giggling of Professor Ivo's magnificent monkeys, who clearly have delivered this case. Artemis places a tracer on Cheshire's sword during the fight, but then she places a second tracer on another passing train and gives that to the boys to follow while she, I guess, tries to prove herself by tracking down Cheshire herself.
Back in the cave, Zatanna, Miss Martian, and Connor break into Red Tornado's apartment to find that Red Tornado is building an android body. Smash cut to the Brain, Ivo, and Clarion receiving the briefcase from Sportsmaster, which contains the partially regenerated arm of Starro, the giant echinoderm from way back in Downtime. The three villains perform a variety of magical and technological experiments on the arm, and then we cut back to Artemis,
who has tracked Cheshire back to the warehouse that they're in, and Cheshire points out to her that Red Arrow put a tracer on Artemis herself as well, meaning that Red Arrow is right outside the building and knows that Artemis lied about the tracer she put on Cheshire. Red Arrow and Artemis confront Sportsmaster and Cheshire, while Red Arrow calls in Calder and Kid Flash for reinforcements. Back in the cave, Red Tornado returns, surprising Zatanna, McGann, and Connor in his apartment. He explains that the android body he's building will act as a secret identity of sorts for him so that he can live among humans.
While the fight back in the bayou with Sportsmaster and Cheshire continues, the villains complete whatever they were doing and escape. Artemis's ruse with the tracer is revealed to the team by Roy, undermining Wally's trust in her. The final scene is Artemis returning home to find Sportsmaster in her room. We finally get the reveal that Sportsmaster is the father of both her and Cheshire. He also undermines her trust in the team, suggesting they will never trust her again, and she should accept who and what she truly is and switch sides. And that is a lot to deal with in this episode, so let's jump right into Feeling the Aster.
Superboy, are you alright?
I'm fine. Feeling the Aster.
There's a lot of pretty fun stuff in this one, actually. The Zeta Tube that Green Arrow and Artemis are outside in the very first pre-credit scene is actually an old blue English police box in an alleyway, which is clearly a nod to Doctor Who. Like, there's no reason for that style of a police box to even really be in the United States that I'm aware of. But for some reason, it's a bit of a Doctor Who nod. It was actually pointed out to us, and I'm sorry whoever sent us this picture, but someone had tagged our Twitter account in the image, and I didn't catch it the first 50 times I saw the episode, so it was pretty fun to see something new.
This was another great back and forth episode. We've been seeing a lot of these recently. A heavy action sequence cut with a fairly boring, typical non-action sequence. And the show continues to very masterfully balance action and a break. Still driving the story forward, still letting what's most important take center stage, but finding that perfect balance between both types of scenes. So it is great to see that continuing here.
Speaking of the action, too, you get like Sportsmaster's fighting style, Cheshire's fighting style, Red Arrow's fighting style, Artemis's fighting style. Like, everybody's fighting style continues to be somewhat unique and different and really tuned toward what it is that they do. I'm not exactly sure how they do these things behind the scenes. I know in shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender, they literally have a kung fu master, one guy who knows all four styles that they use a lot in the show, and so they choreograph all these things just like it's in a movie. But how these things get choreographed and styled out for everybody's different fighting styles, that's just got to be a fascinating conversation, and I wonder who they pull in to help do these things. Is that a directorial decision or what? But anyway, the fight choreography just keeps being awesome. I love this reveal that Sportsmaster is Artemis's father. I think we've gotten some hints of it. Like, I just know it so well now that I'm trying to remember, even in earlier episodes, whether or not we don't find out earlier than this. I think this is the official reveal, right?
I believe you're right. There are several moments where Artemis reacts or says something in an odd way when Cheshire or Sportsmaster are brought up to indicate that there is something else there.
Like Artemis saying to Cheshire, like, you're working with Sportsmaster, and she's like, she doesn't say you're working with Dad. Like, she says you're working with Sportsmaster, and Cheshire's like, not my call. You know, like, she gets really pissed about it. Like, she hates it. But we don't know why.
There may have been, and I may be 100% wrong, so please call me out if I am. There may have been a moment once or twice where Sportsmaster called one of the two of them baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a phrase he specifically only uses with his daughters.
When Sportsmaster rescues Cheshire in Targets, he says, beggars can't be choosers, little girl, or something like that, but he doesn't say baby girl. I think he refers to Artemis as baby girl and Cheshire as little girl or something like that.
So, again, tiny hints towards a relationship there.
Yeah, but here it's very clear. Like, it's blatant.
Yeah. And I was going to say something that was crashing the mode. Stop myself.
Yeah, don't crash the mode.
Artemis really is the focus of this episode. And again, we are wrapping up season 1. A lot of characters are getting spotlight episodes, and this is Artemis's. We see her being awesome. We see her teaming up with Green Arrow. We see her taking out bad guys. We see her enjoying being a hero. We see her kind of removing that weight on her shoulders that has been there. She likes working with the team. She's happy with what she does. And then there's just this crushing moment of not only her mom telling her, oh yeah, your heroes didn't just say, hey, this chick is pretty awesome, let's get her on the team. That her mom was instrumental in her becoming part of the team.
Yeah.
And then a second blow when she shows up and Roy is back in the cave.
Right. And particularly Wally is so excited about it, right?
Right. And that makes it worse.
Right. And which gives it that moment with Wally where it's like, oh, thank goodness. I mean, Wally has been Wally the whole time, but he's clearly putting on airs in some ways. And this is just the genuine moment of seeing, like, you know that Wally has a good heart. You know what I mean? And here he, like, stops and thinks and is aware of other people's emotions around him and is concerned about it. And, like, all these things that show that trigger of growth, character growth, which makes it an extra bit of a punch when at the end, after he's opened up, finding out that, well, and at least his assumption is that she was just trying to prove herself, right, to the team. Mm-hmm. And she can't really answer him because it's probably some of that, but it's also probably some of, again, she didn't want to be revealed as related to these people and that kind of stuff, so wanted to take care of it herself. It could be a combination of things, a little bit more complex than just trying to prove herself.
Yeah, but seeing Wally have that great scene on the bioship with her, that was such a nice payoff to what Wally has been doing the entire rest of this season.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that also gives us a moment, and you touched on this earlier, that there's a lot more happening outside of these episodes. Specifically, people are training to do other things. And Artemis says, other than McGann, she's the best at piloting the bioship. So she's logged the most hours. She's done the most practice. So it's cool that in that brief little 2 seconds of statement, we know more about the larger world. And we know that the team is being trained by the other heroes to do lots of different things.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, we saw nods to it in Downtime when Calder just kind of robins away, like ninjas away from Garth. And in this one too, Artemis throws Cheshire, and Cheshire's like, whoa, nice move. Did Canary teach you that kind of thing? And we know that, or at least from the comics anyway, Cheshire is one of the most skilled martial artists in the DC universe, second to Lady Shiva and Batman, right? So to have her get thrown, she's clearly still underestimating Artemis, and her training is gone a different direction, even though she probably grew up, at least until, Artemis was probably 8 or 10 or something like that, grew up training with her. So you see her maturing so much more.
There was a lot of, in my opinion, exposition in this episode, but it was handled very well. And I think the reason it was all there is because we're only, 3 episodes away from the finale at this point?
Yeah.
So all these threads are getting brought back up. The start of this episode, when we see the Starro piece, when we see Clarion and the brain doing things with it, we're being reminded of all of this stuff from the past 20 episodes that's now super important.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
To shoulder that weight, there was a fair bit of, hey, here's what happened. Hey, remember this? Hey, this thing is going on. But I think it was handled very well, specifically with Cheshire. Cheshire brings up a lot of important facts, but she also does it in a coy, quippy villain way.
Right.
So there's a lot of cool, yes, this is important information, but it's handled during the fight. It's handled in an important way. It's just really well done.
I noticed that you put a note down here about the guards not checking the truck.
Yes. Yes. It's just such a silly trope that we always see whenever someone is smuggling something in a truck out of a secure facility. For some reason, the guards never check the truck.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys. It's your one job,
They
right?
looked in the back, but they didn't do anything else. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and I think it said something like biohazard or biological waste or something like that.
Yeah.
So they're playing off the, above my pay grade, I don't care about that, whoa, kind of moment.
Yeah.
It's a classic trope. It's silly. It's such an exploit, though. It feels kind of cheap sometimes.
I understand.
But I really did like a lot of the other moments in this episode. It's so silly, but I loved the ice teleport that Clarion uses at the very end.
Yeah.
It's so random, but it's just cool.
It's random, which makes sense for him as well, right? Plays off of his childish sense of humor and that kind of thing, but also can be really confusing. Like, it's maybe subtle or a little whatever, maybe reaching, but like, you know, in a TV show or in a game, a tabletop game, somebody teleports, you know they've teleported, right? And so you're like, okay, they got away, let's focus on finding them. In here, he left behind these like ice statues or whatever, which it basically gives them more time to get away. People are like, wait, what's happening? Did they turn into ice? Like, you have to like figure out what it is that's going on because it's Clarion and he's made it chaotic and weird in a strange way. But I agree with you. I think it was very, very cool.
There is a line he says in a later episode. It just says, yeah, I'd bring the chaos.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
It's just so fitting. And then there were two quick little, what I consider hilarious jokes in this episode. They both happen in Red Tornado's apartment.
Yeah.
Before they went up there, Connor tells Wolf, let us know if Red Tornado shows up.
Right.
And then Red Tornado shows up. They cut back to Wolf. He's asleep.
He's sleeping because he's a wolf.
Because he's a wolf.
He's a smart wolf, but he is not greater than human intelligence, right? Like
right.
And
then when they are looking at the John Smith android,
right,
Zatanna has the line about he'd be much more human if he had pants.
He's cute, but he needs pants.
And then she magics pants with some backward spells. Totally stupid, goofy joke moments, but they make me laugh every single time.
I love how that's when I realized that pants backwards is very close to snap, because she said the last word is snap or something like that, and she snaps her fingers, and I was like, oh, that is kind of pants backwards, isn't it? Pretty funny stuff.
There was one more point I kind of wanted to make here, but I think it might fit a little bit better in Crashing the Mode. So why don't we jump over to a Canary Debrief?
Yeah, let's do it.
Stick around. Class is in session.
All right, so we've touched on the last couple of episodes, but here's basically the third step in this triple mole setup, right? So this episode, along with agendas and image, sets up the three main mole suspects for the finale. So each episode, they're solid in and of themselves with the storylines that they have self-contained in it, but they also allow us to build empathy for these characters, sets the foundation for the finale. We know that, or at least we think, they're not moles, right? I remember when I was watching it through the first time, even though we feel like they're not moles, and we're fairly sure that they're not moles, they're now being set up to potentially betray the team, meaning that they would end up being looked at as moles the whole time, which is even extra heartbreaking, right? It also shows that the light manipulating events and individuals subtly, as well as doing all of this overt craziness that they're doing as well. They depend on the insecurity of each of these characters and the immaturity of each of these characters, underestimating that maturity and their ability to trust other people and their friends. The episodes do a great job of building this momentum into the finale, answering questions, reminding us of key things about these characters building into the finale, and also kind of building our expectations of what could be a potentially cliche end, which is, okay, they're teenagers, they're not going to trust somebody else, they're going to keep their secrets, because that's always the go-to drama tension builder, which is someone knows something and they're just not telling someone else. It's frustrating as a reader or a watcher of shows to hear somebody who knows all the answers say, we don't have time to tell you, or we don't have time for that right now. And then, of course, that ends up being the trigger for all the drama in the show. And so we'll maybe chat about this in Crashing the Mode, but we'll definitely chat about it in the next few episodes where things don't really work out as tropey as that, which is really nice. So thinking about wrapping up toward the end of your story, making sure, again, to answer some questions that you've dropped, build things together, tighten up your storyline so that you have a very direct stream to your big finale, and then go from there. That's where we're at in this 3-ish act season.
Okay, so let's move on to Crashing the Mode.
Tell us something we don't know yet.
Sorry, BB. We can't risk altering the time stream. We do that, we're all feeling the mode.
As always, we are talking about spoilers here, specifically for Young Justice, both Seasons 1 and Seasons 2, but also we're touching on some spoilers and Easter eggs for the large DC universe. If you do not want to be spoiled, please stop listening and join us later. If you are still here, get ready to get spoiled. So the thing I wanted to bring up before that piggybacks off of what you just explained in the Canary Debrief, we have all these moments in this episode and in the last few where all of our main characters are getting blackmailed.
Yeah.
And it's this horrible moment of, wait, is this real? Is this happening? These are teenagers. They're playing on exactly what they're worried about. Honestly, as a viewer, it's very scary because we're saying, okay, here's someone who's, like in the case of Artemis, she's been trying to prove herself, and now she's basically been told, you're not worth anything. The bad guys manipulated the situations to demonstrate that you're not worth anything. You should just change sides. And the show ends in that moment kind of as she's deciding. So we don't really know what's happening. And we've seen that set up with Superboy. We've seen that with Miss Martian. Now we're seeing it with Artemis. Going into the finale here, this is a very, what's going to happen? Is this some huge plot? Are we going to split the team? What's happening? We don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. I agree. And again, this tropiness is pretty standard, this idea that teenagers aren't mature enough to talk to their friends or that kind of thing. And the light is playing off of that Insecurity, which is clearly where the name of the episode came from, and underestimating them. And I like the fact that it ends up being that the team is way more mature or makes more mature decisions is what really undermines the light's plan toward the end here. My wife and I are constantly bugged about shows that use this as a drama builder. So I knew that my wife was going to like these upcoming episodes where they actually admit and talk to their friends and make a plan and let everything go and trust each other. It's just the best way to end this season. It just really culminated in this team becoming a family, a chosen family.
Yeah, and that makes the finale of Season 1 that much better because we have this moment where all of these problems get resolved and the team moves forward stronger from there. I love that episode. We're going to talk about that pretty soon here, so I don't want to talk about it now. We don't have a lot more to talk about in Crashing the Mode purely because Young Justice knows it's wrapping up. It's building that momentum.
Yeah.
It's not taking a lot of time away from the plot at this point. But there are still a couple other points we want to make here in Crashing the Mode.
Yeah, they're not adding a lot of new loose threads. They're not going to be doing that now, right? Because we're coming up toward that end.
Yeah, we're finally resolving all of these threads. The threads of what the robot guys, Ivo and Tio, had been doing this whole time are brought back up now. The thread of Starro is finally brought back up. So we're getting to where we need to be. Yeah. You specifically wanted to bring up the payoff of Arrowette.
Yeah, exactly. And so I mentioned in our Artemis Secret Origins episode specifically about that originally the voice actress for Artemis was cast as Arrowette. And it's interesting, they switched her to Artemis and then did all these changes and additions of Sportsmaster and blah, blah, blah. But the reporter that they save at the beginning is the father of the character of Arrowette. And if you watch the beginning of this episode again, it's very clear that this little girl is looking out the window and looking up, like literally looking up to Artemis on a rooftop, fighting this villain assassin who is going to kill her father. And you can see, like, they make a specific cut to her face being wide-eyed and in awe of Artemis. Now, within the context of the episode, it's nice because then it feeds into that next scene where Artemis is talking to her mom and being excited about, you should have seen the little girl's face, and I'm doing something that makes me happy, and then this is good. Within the context of the episode itself, that makes sense. But the fact that they spent a shot on the little girl's face has me absolutely convinced that they will include Arrowette in a season 3 or 4, maybe. But, like, she's got a 5-year jump. The little girl's probably between 6 and 8 years old, which is just about the same age as Gar was. I think Garfield's 8. I think they said 8 years old in that episode. So he's 13 in season 2. This Arrowette would be 13 in the season 2. If they do a little bit of a time jump, 5-6 months or something like that, should be a little bit older. We'll see. But it would be interesting to have the character of Arrowette inspired by the character of Artemis as we move on, and have someone to, now that Artemis is going to move out of this archer role, specifically archer role, and move into the huntress or tigress role, Arrowette can fill that archer space. Because Red Arrow's moving on, then Roy becomes Arsenal, so there's not really that archer front. So there's actually an archer vacuum on the team to readily be filled by this Arrowette character. So I'd really be interested to see if they follow through with that.
And the last point that you had in the notes here is something that I didn't even pick up on. So why don't you just take this one?
Yeah, so there's the scene where Roy shows up Artemis by firing that long-distance arrow to put the tracer on Sportsmaster's boat. And then he jumps onto his jet ski and he's following Sportsmaster. And he's communicating with the team via the radios because Miss Martian is not there. And they've specifically mentioned the fact that they are using the radios and they might have hacked the frequency. But somehow Sportsmaster knows, and he could just be smart enough, I guess, knows that Roy's going to take a dive and that there was a tracer, and he just walked to the back of the boat and found the tracer, and then kind of knew that Aqualad was following him and just kind of put all the pieces together. It's possible, but personally, I think it's more likely that subconsciously Roy actually switched his comm somehow or alerted them to the frequency that they had, so that when he's telling Aqualad the plan, he's actually telling Sportsmaster as well, because I do believe the camera is on Sportsmaster when Roy is telling Calder about this plan. Because it just seems like too convenient for Sportsmaster to be like, okay, he took a dive, now I'm going to walk to the back of the boat to find the tracer he just told me about, okay, and then I'm going to throw in the bombs for Calder, and then I'm going to get away. It just seems like if you're going to have Roy in a scene like this, and Roy is clearly the mole and under the control of Sportsmaster, and Sportsmaster gets away, it just makes sense that Roy's doing more than giving him information. He's going to sabotage people, right? And particularly in an episode here where they're talking about, might be the next episode. Yeah, I think it's the next episode where Roy finally admits that there isn't a mole, quote unquote. So he basically betrayed the team in this episode and maybe didn't even know it.
Yeah, that is definitely next episode, because that is specifically in my notes that he declares the mole hunt over.
Yeah.
But we will talk about that in that episode. Right. For now, it is time to consider this mode thoroughly crashed and wrap up with a little bit of fan service. What do you have, Rich?
Yeah, we're going to do a little throwback here and get back to a couple of AMVs, or at least one AMV for this episode. It is a Young Justice-focused AMV based on the song Phenomenon, which is really cool. Nice upbeat song by a Luke Jin 90. I don't have much to say about this except that it's a really cool song and some really cool beats and cutscenes from the show that fit really nicely with the song. So jump over there and check it out.
And remember that with AMVs, they typically pull content from both seasons. So
yeah.
Watch with caution, watch with care. You're probably going to see something that will be considered spoilers. So
absolutely
keep a lookout. If you are doing something in the Young Justice world, if you are making some cool fan art, some cool production, let us know about it. Get a hold of us via the show email or Twitter or social media. We need more people to feature here in our fan service. We love spreading the community of this show and all the creators who are doing stuff with it. So if you are making something, or if you know someone who is, get a hold of us. We might feature them here in fan service. We might even bring them into the cave here for a quick interview. We can do lots of fun things. So with all of that being said, it is time to wrap up this mission and head out of the cave. As always, thank you all for listening. We truly appreciate you spending time with us. If you have a moment, we would also appreciate that good old 5-star review on iTunes or whatever podcatcher you like to use. It helps other people find us. And if you leave us a review, we will make sure to read it in an Intel update just to share the love. And as always, feel the
And keep using our hashtags, everyone. Hashtag Keep Binging YJ on Netflix. Hashtag YJ3 or hashtag Young Justice Season 3, depending on how much room you have in your tweets or posts. And hashtag Buy YJ Comics on Comixology. Greg Weisman wants us all to be using that hashtag so that we can get DC Comics to support more tie-ins as well. And if you want to help us get more episodes, more Secret Origins, actual play podcasts, and more, please consider popping over to our Patreon and supporting us there. For just a few dollars a month, you can help us do even more with the show while getting some cool stuff for yourself. And as always, stay whelmed, everyone.
You've been listening to Whelmed, the Young Justice Files podcast. Our computer is voiced by Madison Ray. Our theme was composed by Emily Mio. Our logo was created by Kevin Bates. Whelmed is a fan-made podcast and is not officially affiliated with DC Comics, DC Entertainment, Warner Brothers Animation, and any other owners of Young Justice or its related source material. As such, these companies have sole ownership of all symbols, images, names, logos, and proprietary material related to Young Justice. Original content of this podcast is ours under Creative Commons. Thanks for listening, and stay whelmed.